Hello, this is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us via Zoom Kerry Politzer, jazz pianist. How are you, Kerry?
I'm good. How are you doing, Trudy?
Very, very well. Kerry, if just try to not mention my name while we are on the air. We just try to remain anonymous while we are on the air. That's okay, but thank you. All right, Kerry. First of all, tell us a little bit about how you came to be a pianist. What inspired you to play the piano?
I guess I was always really into music ever since I was like 3 years old. I can remember writing songs. And then when I had a grandmother pass away, she left me um, a piano.
Mhm,
So I think that's when I was 4. And then I started taking lessons at school. And it was just kind of a thread that wove throughout my entire life, always having music be a part of my life.
mhm. So, what about your family? Did you have a musical family?
I guess my mom played clarinet and some piano and accordion, and I had a grandfather that played on cruise ships. He played saxophone and piano and violin, I believe.
Um, and uh, what else do you play besides piano?
I'm always trying to pick stuff up, and so
Mm.
I've been studying flute lately,
Oh,
and I always have really loved the guitar, so sometimes I pick that up too. And since I really love Brazilian music, guitar is such an essential part of that music.
mhm. Well, the chords, guitar chords and are they what's similar between like chords and the piano and how does Brazilian music fit into that?
With the guitar, well, so basically when I'm trying to voice a chord on the piano, I was taught by a Brazilian teacher that I should try to mimic what the guitar does, which is, the guitar strings are tuned in fourths with a third. And so you don't really have, unless you mess with the tunings, you don't really have a lot of, minor seconds or clusters and things like that. It's a very cordial kind of sound.
Mhm.
So I was told to try to do the same thing on the piano, but it sounds really lovely on the guitar. I mean, like João Gilberto, who's the father of bossa nova, created that whole style using the guitar, so it sounds very, beautiful and authentic
Mhm.
to
And
do that.
then you try to translate then that into piano. And how when when did you get inspired to do that? To how did you learn about Brazilian jazz?
When I was at New England Conservatory, we had a really wonderful, very well-known singer who was one of our teachers, our graduate assistant teachers, named Luciana Souza, and she's amazing. And she really gave me and some other students a window into that music.
Mm. And you were you a Spanish speaker from how for how long so that you could pick that up or with your Brazilian musical friends.
I spoke Spanish. I had always kind of studied Spanish, and then when I was studying Brazilian music, then I started trying to pick up Portuguese,
Mm,
and that is, it sounds very different, right? It looks a lot the same, when you're reading on a piece of paper, but the sounds are very, very different.
mhm. Yes. So did you what about you? Have you ever contemplated voice as well?
I do a little bit of singing also. Here I have in Portland, I have a group called Bossa PDX, and try to play different we try to perform a lot of different Brazilian music, and I listen to a lot of records. So I had taken like, especially during the pandemic, I took a bunch of arrangements off of the original records with flute arrangements and everything, and also tried to really listen to what the vocalists were doing. So we always perform at least a couple of songs that have vocals.
Mhm. So your jazz ensemble, do you compose for them?
Yes, I've always done a lot of writing, even like when I was in college, when I switched from classical to jazz piano. one of the first things that I did, I had a really wonderful teacher named Charlie Banakis who had everybody just writing all the time. He just really felt like it was important. So we would even write out, improvisations or just for an exercise, write exercises over different chord qualities and then making some of those fragments into tunes. And I really started writing a lot in my early 20s.
Mhm. And what happened to those writings?
I have recorded a bunch of them. Some of them are lying around, some of them I throw away. But that's one thing with my students. I'm always trying to encourage everybody to write their own music.
And those beginning compositions, are there still recordings of them?
Well, I actually just recorded an album that I released in May called Ruminations,
Mhm.
and it has, I believe, like one of the very earliest things I had ever written on it, which was a song called Hayride.
Oh.
And that was, from my college days. So on this latest record, I included the very newest and some of the very oldest compositions that I have written.
Mhm. And how how different are they? How has your work evolved?
That's funny that you asked that. I recently did a gig with some people and I brought in a bunch of compositions, and somebody asked me which ones of these compositions are the newest and which are the oldest, because I guess he wanted to try to figure it out. And that's a good question. I think I tried to come up with an answer how they were different in the moment. And I don't know if I mean, I kind of feel like it's just I write a lot of different things all the time, and so I almost don't even know if I can tell what qualities would make something more recent and what would make it older.
Maybe your influences. What influences have you had over the years?
That's a good question too. So I started out when I started studying with Charlie Banakis, he really got me into McCoy Tyner and Chick Corea, and I always really loved Wayne Shorter a lot. I would have to say probably Wayne Shorter and Thelonious Monk would be my favorite composers, and I would feel very influenced by both of them. And then I got very into Brazilian music, and with all of those particular like rhythmic qualities that samba influenced music had, samba jazz. Um, but yeah, as you go through life, you hear a lot of new things and you get influenced by a lot of different things. And sometimes you can choose to write in a more stream of consciousness style, or you can choose to write in a more intentional style, like you always have. The more you listen and the more you play, the more tools you have.
Mhm. Mhm. When when you were in well, when did how did your classical training let's put it this way, you're composing jazz right now. If you did not have that classical training, do you think your work would have been drastically you would be drastically different now?
Well, I guess classical music, it's interesting. I've had a very kind of storied relationship with classical music in that there's positive things about it and then there were not so positive things about it. So one of the things that wasn't so positive was that I ended up with a pretty bad case of tendonitis because I learned how to play in a way that didn't make physical sense. So for 5 years, like between the years of 14 and 19, I would go through long stretches where I just physically could not play. And so then when I was 19, I discovered a technique called this awareness through movement, a Feldenkrais technique that really helped me learn how to move more efficiently and without pain. And then I discovered through Charlie Banakis a bunch of exercises through Abby Whiteside that helped me fix my technique. These days, there's a lot more awareness about what constitutes ergonomic technique. A lot of people have been exposed to Dorothy Taubman and just ways to use your body in a way that doesn't make it work against itself. So
Mhm.
that's one thing that classical music did, was actually force me to stop playing. But in that time, I started listening a lot, and I was like, when I can start to play again, I'm going to want to do something different.
Mhm. So you were hoping to do something different that sounded different, or something that would be more conducive to ergonomically preserving your wrist and your fingers.
I guess I wanted to play things that I physically could play, which is
Mhm.
what's one nice thing about jazz is that you can play up to your limitations and you don't have to try to supersede them. Like if I was going to try to play, Scriabin or Rachmaninoff or something, I
Mhm.
might be going past my limitations unless I really sat there and worked on different passages for months, which is just not where my head is at now. But with jazz, when I'm improvising, I'm never going to play something that's harder, I think physically harder than what I could play.
Mhm. So in other words, when you're playing jazz, you're practically enjoying it with your whole soul and body, so that you just would not even think about doing something that's uncomfortable, because that would not fit into your mood and what you want to express then. Or is that a correct interpretation?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, it just wouldn't occur to me to do something that I wasn't able to do.
But now that so now you don't have any problems, right? You no.
I don't.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
with the combination of Feldenkrais and then the Abby Whiteside exercises, with piano, and I always try to talk to students about it these days because when I was a kid, I don't think that this was really prioritized so much, the whole idea of comfort when playing the piano. Like I was doing all kinds of movements with my hands and wrists that were just not ergonomic at all. So now I try to teach people all the time about alignment and rotation and not using excess force because if you use proper technique, and by proper I mean, painless, you can play for a much longer time over your lifespan than if you play against yourself.
mhm, mhm. Yes, and as long as you're able to play, then you're able to express yourself correctly with the proper ergonomics.
Right, because
Do
then you're
you
not
know?
in pain.
No, no, no. You go ahead. You go ahead and finish.
What's that?
I just said that you go ahead and finish what you were
Oh,
saying.
yeah, I mean if you're in pain, then yeah, it's definitely harder to express yourself because you have another element at play that you're concentrate, that you can't get out of your mind, the fact that this hurts.
Mhm. Do you know if other instructors concentrate focus as much as you do on ergonomics, because it seems as if this is really important, and it should be helping your students a lot. Do other instructors teach like you? Do you know?
I think anybody who studied the Taubman technique,
Mhm.
which I know some of the basic principles, I didn't study with a Taubman teacher really for very long, but one person, actually my husband, George Colligan, who's a great pianist, has incredible technique, and it was all really because of the Taubman exercises, and it's all based on gravity and rotation, and he really brings that to his students as well because both of us, we want people to feel comfortable when they're playing because it's really important.
Yeah. Well, now this classical training is kind of like in the past right now, but have you ever spoken to maybe fellow instructors? What about the classical instructors now? Do you think that they are teaching more ergonomic technique than before when you were a student?
I think that more people place an emphasis on it. So I teach at Portland State University, and
Mhm.
there's a woman there named Lisa Marsh who teaches body mapping. She's a
Oh,
pianist.
mhm.
And so there's a little bit of a wellness element there so people can, if anybody's experiencing any problems, because, making music is a repetitive activity and a lot of people experience problems. So I
Yeah.
think maybe there's more awareness of this now. And however you can get to greater comfort, whether it's with Alexander technique or body mapping or Feldenkrais or, revamping your technique, anything that is right for you, that it can get you to feel more comfort when playing is the right technique for you.
What about carpal tunnel syndrome? Does that affect the pianist too?
Oh, definitely. I know people that have had carpal and cubital tunnel syndrome and even had surgery because, I fortunately, crossing my fingers, haven't suffered from that, but I definitely relate to the experience of, having just chronic discomfort when playing. So I know that that can be, also some of us who have also worked office jobs at the same time that we're playing piano, like a lot of computer use in addition to playing the piano, just any kind of overuse in a certain repetitive way can contribute to these problems.
Mhm. So let's talk about the themes of your compositions. What are the themes, and how did they how did you get to them? Why are those themes important to you?
Well, the very latest album is called Ruminations
Mhm,
and kind of deals, a lot of the songs deal with repetitive or intrusive thoughts. I
mhm,
thought it would be interesting to write some things based on those themes. So the title track is Ruminations, and then there's a song called Letting Go, which is basically about trying to let go of some of the thoughts. And there's Persistent Memory. There's a song called Cudgel that's a more avant-garde kind of song, which is about, not, the feeling of not being able to get away from an intrusive thought. And it has a figure in the beginning that's like a repetitive, uh, a dissonant chord just coming down on you, repeatedly.
mhm,
So yeah, sometimes it's fun to play with different themes, and that I think this record, a lot of the songs definitely have that theme.
mhm. What was that track's name? Persistent Memory? Yes,
Yes.
I think I played that track on Wizard one time for sure
Oh,
recently. Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
And so these intrusive thoughts, do they kind of relate to your music, or if you're able to discuss, like what kind of intrusive thoughts were you thinking about that were maybe impeding you from your work, if you could share.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they could be any kind of worry that I might have. In addition to being a musician and a teacher, I'm also a mom.
Hmm.
And so that brings with it all of its attendant worries.
Hmm.
So sometimes, or, it could just be something as simple as maybe I had an interaction that went south. Maybe I said something that didn't come across the right way, or, maybe I offended somebody, maybe something went wrong. Sometimes when something goes wrong, then it's harder to get awareness of that outside of your mind. So that's definitely something that happens. Or, did I get through, did I accidentally, you know, go through the yellow light and then it turned red, you know, it could be, a very simple everyday worry. But I find that, some distressing thoughts are difficult to get out of your mind. And I think maybe one way that I deal with emotions is to write music.
Hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. So which tracks and ruminations are your resolution tracks?
Well, I think that there, this the very track Ruminations, it's kind of nice because there's like a drum solo that feels very cathartic over this vamp that we're doing. It's almost like the melody that we're playing is a little bit of the intrusive thought that keeps repeating, but then the drums are, playing this cathartic, very rhythmic and, energetic solo. And so that could be, something that is a resolution. But
Mhm.
just the act of composing music in a way is dealing with the intrusive thoughts because your mind is going elsewhere when you're composing. Your mind is having to go to a different place.
Mhm. Do you tour as well, right? And how do you have time for everything, teaching and writing and parenting?
I don't even know. And gigging too. Yeah, it's very challenging. I'm thinking, I have two kids that go to two different schools, and then next year, I think everything starts at 8 in the morning. So I think that might make it more difficult for certain work during the week. Because we're always kind of adding to our teaching income with, various assorted gigs, whether it's a concert or even, a restaurant or, you know, anything that we can do to add to the freelance income.
Mhm.
But definitely it's a big challenge. The reason I can talk to you right now is because my little one is at a day camp, so he's not in here to interrupt us. And then I told my other one to stay in his room.
So are they interested in music? What do they think of your music?
I don't know. I don't, they're not, like, I know that they both have an ear for music, but I think just the fact that there's so much music around the house and so many instruments means that they're not interested. They
Mhm.
kind of, they're very much into their own thing. And I think if they wanted to eventually in their life, they could pick something up and probably be pretty good at it because I hear them singing all the time and I can tell that they have ear for music and one of them even can tell like when something is in a different key,
Mhm.
but they don't demonstrate a lot of interest in all of the various instruments around the house.
Are they interested in watching you practice?
Well, I don't really practice that much because I don't have time, but
Oh,
my husband practices more. I guess no, they're not really. I mean, when they were little, I guess the little one would come in and he would try to bang on the piano while we were playing or just distract us somehow.
mhm.
But maybe it's more to get us off of the piano or, out of the instrument room.
Yeah, you want the attention. That's that's the key.
Yeah.
So are there any events that you want to tell our listeners about that they could partake of?
Oh, for sure. So some things that you can see online, there was a recent event on August 6th at Mesro in New York City where we
Mhm.
had a live stream. We played trio. Me and my husband played with this really wonderful bass player, Alex Claffey, who is just so musical and so it's just such a great expresser of music. And you can find that on YouTube at it's the Mesro and Smalls YouTube. I guess it's Mezzrow and then Smalls is the the parent club for Mesro. So it might be the Smalls Live YouTube. And then in September, we're going to Vancouver to play at Frankie's Jazz Club. That's, I think, September 22nd. I'll be in Vancouver. I don't know if they live stream that. I'm going to San Francisco on September 14th to play with some other musicians who love Brazilian music at Mr. Tipples on, I believe, Fall Street. And then here in Portland, I have a monthly kind of a residency at our local club, the 1905, that where we play with my Bossa PDX band some Brazilian music. It's usually the third Thursday of the month, but it really varies. So if you go to my website at kerrypolitzer.com, it lists all of the various events, and when there is a live stream available, I usually will post a link to that.
Awesome. And the Brazilian music scene, as it changes, how closely aligned are you with that? And does it affect your work?
With how does the Brazilian music
Yeah, the
how
music
does
scene
it
change like
inform?
different trends and all that.
I guess well with the bossa nova band we play some of the classic 19 late 1950s early 1960s music, so some of that is very uh, maybe retro, but
Mhm.
then we also I always try to keep track of what some of the wonderful young Brazilian jazz musicians are doing these days. So I transcribed a couple of like Chico Pinheiro tunes. He's incredible um, Brazilian jazz guitarist and vocalist. So we always try to keep it fresh. I'm trying to listen to what's going on now. There's like Trio Corrente and all these really wonderful modern jazz musicians that I'm trying to listen to help get ideas from and sometimes play different arrangements from.
And so Ruminations does contain these Brazilian influences, right? So that our listeners would know if they were to listen to tracks from Ruminations.
Maybe it's always there in the background somewhere. That's not like that's more of like a I mean, I guess there is a song on there called A Breeze Comes that's supposed to be like a bayon. So
Oh,
it has that kind of rhythm and it's in 2/4 and it has, a lot of 16th note kind of rhythms. But and then I guess yeah, there is a song on there that's a more of a classic bossa that I wrote called
mhm,
Saída. That
mhm,
that is something that I recorded a really long time ago, but I felt like I didn't really like the first recording of it because it was too short. So I really tried to make this one extended, and that's probably maybe my favorite track on the record, the slow bossa that is on the record.
Okay, what's the name of the track again?
Saida, it's Saida.
Uh-huh.
And I believe it might be in the middle of the record, but it's
Okay.
very slow and it's very sad, but it's probably one of my favorite songs that I've written, although that sounds kind of weird, but yeah.
What does Saida mean?
It means like, I guess it means like exit or departure,
Oh, okay.
something leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow. And do you have any other album that contains like a past album that contains your Brazilian influence work?
in 2019, I got a grant to explore the music of Durval Ferreira, who was a really wonderful Brazilian composer and guitarist, and he accompanied Lenny Andrade a lot. And his songs really sound like they're very jazzy, they're very beboppy, but they also have some of the Brazilian jazz rhythms. So I really wanted to pay tribute to him. He played, together with a writing partner, Mauricio Einhorn. He wrote a lot of Brazilian jazz classics that instrumentalists and vocalists continue to perform today. So we
Okay.
kind of had like a little bit of an interesting take on his stuff, and then a couple of originals like written in that vein.
What's the name of that album?
Well, it's called Diagonal, Diogonal, or Diagonal, Diagonal. Yeah, because that's a song that he wrote, and so we did a different kind of a fusiony, jazzy fusiony version of it.
So there's a different meaning from diagonal, right? Or is it the same meaning as
I
as
think it's
the
the same meaning, but different pronunciation. Yeah.
okay. Well, ruminations comes first, and then if our listeners want to find more more music from you, that with the Brazilian influences would be diagonal, right? And
Yeah.
that's okay. And that might be on YouTube too.
Yeah, that's on all the platforms, but even the very first album I ever wrote, the very first album, Yearning, has a bunch of Brazilian influenced songs on it because that's when I was really, like 20 years ago, I was really discovering all these rhythms and listening to them, and, actually more than 20 years ago. But so there's a lot of different rhythms on that very first album that are Brazilian influenced.
Awesome, learning. Okay. All right. Kerry Politzer, thank you so much for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today. Good luck in your work, and we'll talk again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.